Hello, Jubin.
Hello, sir.
Very happy
Good
to
evening.
see you. And
Thank you, sir.
heartiest congratulations on your commendable performance in the exam.
Thank you, sir.
So, let us begin with addressing the academic aspects of the exam.
So,
Yeah. So, which portion of the exam you found academically the most challenging?
so geography. Geography was kind of the boogeyman for me for a long time,
Hmm.
uh, especially the physical geography part. I mean, I didn't find it tough, but I did not find it exactly enjoyable, so to speak.
Acha.
So, yeah.
ठीक है. And for your prelims and mains preparation, did you segregate the two at any point of time, or was it always an integrated kind of preparation?
So it was mostly integrated, but let's say about 3 months before my first prelims and about 1.5 months before my second and third prelims, I used to completely focus on prelims because I used to solve a lot of prelims papers, mock
Yes.
tests.
Yes.
So, but again, so that also I believe many a times what happens is we pick up a lot of facts, a lot of reports while writing our mock tests for prelims also, and they
Hmm.
become very handy in writing answers in mains. So I mean, it's not exactly complete isolation. We should not see we should not see the entire process. We should see it in one integrated fashion, not in silos. So it
Right.
helps, but 2 to 3 months before the prelims exam, I used to try and focus only on prelims.
ठीक है. And before the prelims, like how much of a prelims test series would you join, or how many mocks would you take, just to get a sense?
So interestingly, I never joined any test series formally for prelims.
Hmm.
But again, I used to practice a lot of mock tests, not only of one particular institution. What I used to do is I used to pick up mostly, sir, in my second and third attempt. I only used to write FLTs, the full sections, full length tests. I did not write sectionals for prelims, but I used to write at least, let's say, a ballpark number of around 30 tests.
30 tests. And regarding GS mains test series, did you join, and how much answer writing practice you got?
Mains, yeah. So for mains, sir, in I was telling Aggarwal, sir, in 2018 attempt, I was preparing with a job. So I
Yes.
was not left with a lot of time to practice writing. So
Yes.
I remember I just wrote one paper for optional. I wrote 3 papers for ethics
Hmm.
and just 2 papers for GS. That's all. So I paid for that in the exam because I had knowledge on all the questions, but I could not write it all. So
Right.
I remember last 7 to 8 questions in 18 attempt. I used to write in 10, 15 minutes. So just flowcharts, keywords.
Yes.
So that a lot of marks. Obviously, I could have gotten a better rank had I practiced writing.
Hmm.
So that again persisted in 2019 because I was already in the IPS, so I did not write much. I became lazy. I was happy with what I had. So again, that reflected in me not being able to complete the paper. So that I corrected in this attempt, sir.
Right.
So that again in 19 the same thing happens. I realized that I have the knowledge, but I didn't have enough time or practice to write it all. So I felt I can do much better. So this year I what it is I did not I studied a bit, I revised a bit, but my main focus was on writing a lot of paper. So this time what
Hmm.
I did is I wrote around 18 GS papers.
Acha.
Uh, yes, I
A
wrote
good
around.
amount of exposure.
Sorry, sir.
I'm saying that's a very good amount of exposure.
Yeah, I wrote around 18 GS papers, and I wrote about what I did is I did not specifically write entire tests of the mock tests. I used to pick up questions and write. I solved the full question sets of previous year papers. So I wrote 16, I wrote 17, 18, and 19. 4 years, both the papers I wrote. Full papers I used to write, sociology. And I wrote around 10 essays this time.
Then it's
Five full papers. Five full essay tests I wrote. That amounts to around 10 topics, 10 essays.
And in essay, you scored a very respectable score of 138.
So,
Right. So, any particular preparation that went into the essay paper? because a lot of people, they frankly rely upon, their cumulative knowledge from general studies, optional preparation.
Sure. Largely, even I relied on my GS and sociology optional knowledge.
Yes.
Even ethics, I use a lot of philosophy in my essays.
Yes.
This time, and if I write from beginning, sir, in all three my attempts, I got good scores in essay. I got 132 plus in all the attempts. This was my highest. One thing I did a little different this time is I myself wrote down around 8 to 10 anecdotes, small anecdotes.
Mm.
Small copy, and I had practiced using them. In fact, I ended up using one of them in my actual essay in the philosophical topic that I wrote. So that is one thing I did specifically for essay. And I, sir, I have a habit of reading a lot of books, fiction, non-fiction.
Yes.
So even if I don't read it page to page, I skim through a lot of books. So what I did this time is I used to write some good quotations, not quotations per se, but the ideas.
Right.
So I had around 18 to 20 book names and their ideas prepared. So that also helped me a lot in using it in my essays.
Acha.
So because I believe writing
you
an
would
author's
paraphrase
name.
from the book and incorporate in your essay.
Yes. For example, if I'm arguing that science and technology is good for humanity,
Yes.
I will, I used to use Yuval Noah Harari's this very famous book called 'Sapiens.
Yes.
So I used to use a small couple of quotations and pointers from his book.
I'm afraid Harari has been done to death in UPSC essay paper by a lot of.
Sir, absolutely. Yeah. So this time I used to I also observed that. So a lot of people write about *Sapiens*.
Yes.
So this time I wrote about Homo Deus and 21 challenges for 21st century.
Right.
So, but his writing is beautiful. So you can't really blame people for
And
reading
would you also try to pick up like the writing style or some literary devices from your wide reading, or
So,
was it whatever comes naturally?
yes, sir. Mostly I rely on my own writing. So subconsciously, I'm sure all the whatever we read impacts us, but I didn't actively do it. I tried to use my natural flow of writing.
ठीक है. Coming to your optional, like what goes into, what was the decision making process? Like, how did you zero down on sociology? What factors you kept in mind?
So,
just to put things in perspective, Jubin doesn't come from a sociology academic background like most. And like most candidates, he comes from an engineering background. He's done BTech in computer science, after which he's done his post-graduation also from IIT Roorkee in computer science. Yeah. So what made you opt for sociology?
Guy.
Yeah.
So sociology was a very, very practical decision. So before I was deciding, I always knew at the back of my head that I'm not going to leave my job. Firstly, because of the unpredictability aspect of UPSC, and secondly, because I love my job. Even today I read about cybersecurity. It's very interesting. So I knew. So that means that directly meant that I have very limited time. I did not have the luxury of 3 to 4 months of dedicated optional preparation. So I knew I have around a month or month and a half at best. So I went through a few syllabus, option syllabus. I went through, I remember public admin, PSIR, anthropology. So that's how it came about. I felt sociology is something I can relate to, and I have a natural inclination to write well because sociology has some language aspect to it as well. Because your writing is very, very academic in nature, especially in sociology. Yeah. So I felt I can do it, and I felt the syllabus is so compact and well defined, and resources are so easily available. I felt I can do it in a month or max 2 months. So that was a very practical decision. I just want to do it because I knew I can do it the best possible way in the given limited time. So.
Okay. And did you ever repent?
For taking sociology?
Yes.
No, sir, not at all.
Not at all. Okay.
I did the first attempt itself in 18 when I got into IPS that sociology has a lot of collateral, application. It's there in GS1, it's there in GS2, social justice. GS3, if you look at questions, are not entirely economic; they're socio-economic. So, and of course, in GS4 and in essay, it has a lot of application. So, I never regretted taking sociology.
Great. Did also it in any manner come up in your interview?
Yes.
Any of the interviews?
Yes. It came up in my first interview. It came up in my second interview. Not this time. This time I got a few questions from sociology, but I was not asked as to why I decided for sociology. It was asked to me in first and second, both interviews.
What were
Yeah.
you asked specifically? Why did you
Uh,
take sociology?
yes, I was asked that you have experience in computer science, you have from engineering background, then why sociology?
Right.
Yeah.
Jubin beta, apart from class notes, what other sources did you use for sociology?
So I did Haralambas selectively, although. And then there is this book by IAS Nitin Sangwan sir. It's
Yes.
rather famous nowadays. So I use that because it's very well curated to the syllabus of UPSC. So that way I use that book. I borrowed some examples. I borrowed some thinkers from there. Haralambas for paper one.
Yes.
And for paper two, again, I relied on Nitin Sangwan sir's book. I took a lot of thinkers from EPW articles. So especially the miscellaneous part of paper two, section B and section C, where we have a lot of contemporary issues. And even in paper two, sir, if we notice, to an untrained mind, the paper will look like a GS paper. They ask you very generic questions nowadays.
Yes.
So for that, I thought to myself that I should have some miscellaneous thinkers up my sleeve. So I collected about 50 thinkers from EPW on various topics.
Achha.
Child labor, women issues, informal sector, mixed economy, planned economy. I picked up a lot of thinkers from there.
There's a lot of groundwork that you did, particularly for paper two.
For paper two, yes. Paper two, I spent around 15 days gathering thinkers. I went through this beautiful book by B.K. Nagla sir. It's a very good book. A lot of people don't read it, but that's a gem of a book.
Yes.
And it sets your language right. It gives you a lot of perspective. So that's a very good book. That I did that page to page, in fact. Nagla's book.
Achha.
Yeah, I went through all the thinkers. Those not mentioned in the syllabus also I read, and I used them profusely in my answers.
Where are the others?
Like N.K. Sinha sir and I.P. Desai. I used all of them in my answers.
And you were rewarded for that hard work, I would say. You scored 142 in your social paper too.
Yes, sir.
Coming to your answer writing style, Jubin, what I recollect is that that you write in points form mostly.
Yes, sir.
And that you also would try to incorporate thinkers, right? Pepper your very scholarly views in your answer, and particularly in the introduction and the conclusion, you would mention some scholar, right?
Yes.
There was a fair emphasis on various thinkers in your both papers, right? And another thing was that you would give these subheadings to make it apparent to the examiner that you are addressing each and every part of the question.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes.
Any particular tips you can share when it comes to social answer writing, as in how do you distinguish your answers from, say, general studies, and that's particularly pertinent for paper two?
Yes, sir. So there are two ways of doing it. I mean, given again my limited understanding, and I am very aware of the fact that I'm speaking to one of the sociology experts. I mean, what I used to do, sir, is I used to firstly, like I said, I used to pick up a lot of thinkers from EPW and Indian Express articles. So I used to use those thinkers because use of thinkers kind of makes an answer very academic in nature, which is the demand of the option. First thing that I used to do is I used to, for example, in 2020 this year, one of the questions was as to what are the challenges of mixed economy or planned economy. Rather than writing the economic issues, I wrote planned economy relates to the various social structures. What are the challenges that the caste system is posing for planned economy? How is it that they're addressing through planned economy and tribal subplan, SC subplans in gender budgeting, so on and so forth. So I related the entire topic to various social structures. I related it to the agrarian transformation, community development programs, and then some aspects of religion, some aspects of, for example, Government of India sponsors Hajj Yatra. At the same time, it also is now sponsoring Amarnath Yatra. Yes. And so it's directly related to planned economy. And at the same time, I'm sending a message to the the examiner that I'm addressing the social issues. Absolutely. So that is something to do. So if the question is very generic, I also try to focus on caste, family, religion,
Good.
agrarian aspect of it, class aspect of it,
Hmm.
so that the answer looks very, very sociological in nature.
Just to put things in perspective, Jubin secured rank 235, right,
Yes,
in
sir.
in CSE 2018,
18,
which
yeah.
for him was not a very good rank, but a lot of people would give their right arm for. Huh?
Yes.
So, but yeah, nice that you set your sight higher and achieved it. Okay. Now, when it comes to using scholarly viewpoints, that's very recommended. But how do you remember so many scholars' names and their viewpoints? Huh? That's a challenge a lot of people face.
I mean, I will praise myself a bit by telling that I have a good memory, is what I feel. I don't revise much. In fact, I get very bored if I have to study the same thing twice or thrice.
Hmm.
What I used to do is I used to write them. So rather
Hmm.
than, for example, I'm going through, let's say, 15 different EPW articles. Now,
Yes.
all those PDFs, even if I underline and save in a nice folder, I cannot go and study it there.
Hmm.
So, I mean, even if I do, I'll not be able to recollect and reproduce. So, what I used to do is I used to, staple 10, 15 loose sheets, and I used to write all these thinkers theme wise. For example, I used to give a heading child labor. I used to write about Lopamudra Kar's articles, Rita Manchanda's articles, Amita Bhavishka's articles. Theme wise, I used to arrange.
Hmm.
So, while arranging itself, if you arrange it very logically, if you go through it once, it gives you a very good feel, and you can remember at least 30-40% of it. And then I used to use it in my mock tests and the previous year questions I'm writing. So that's how I answer before going to the exam hall. In the morning, I used to get up before
Hmm.
sociology exam. I used to spend half an hour, 30-40 minutes just skimming through my thinkers. So I used to have it very fresh in my mind.
But you won't like during the course of your preparation, you won't like revise multiple times. Is that what you are suggesting?
Yeah, I would be lying if I say I didn't revise, but probably 2 to 3 times. I did not study these thinkers 6 or 7 or 8 times. I wrote it down once in a nice compiled manner, and I studied it 2, 3 times. And anyways, we write answers, so you think and
Right.
you write, so it becomes a part of it.
Just to introduce a caveat that might not work for everybody, right?
So,
Because lesser mortals might require more revision than that.
yes,
Huh?
sir, absolutely, absolutely. But again, sir, like I said, I mean, I am saying 2, 3 times of studies, but the may not be active revision, but passive revision through writing and recalling. I would have done it umpteen number of times. So,
Right. Okay. How would you tackle unexpected questions in sociology for which you wouldn't have any scholarly viewpoints prepared? Right. So you had a question on demonetization once. No
yes,
matter
sir.
how much you would have prepared or studied, you wouldn't have right
Right.
scholarly viewpoints on that. So how would you address such questions like there and then in the examination?
So I used to try and somehow link it to something. So in fact, I remember I wrote about Rita Manchanda ma'am's concept of infantilization of women. I
Hmm.
linked it to demonetization. How demonetization might give them their own accounts, and digitized payment will help them make their own decisions.
Acha.
So that's one part of
That
it.
is
I used to
novel, I
try
would
and
say.
yes. So I used to try and be very creative. And if everything fails, like I said, I used to rely on writing about various sociological stratas, various classes. How is it impacting caste? How is it impacting the farmers?
Yes.
What about the middle class? What about basically the topics, basically the syllabus topics? I used to
Yes.
think and I used to try and curate an answer. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Great. Yeah. Uh, Moving on, what was your how were your interview experiences? You've given three.
Yeah.
So how was your like? What is your overall take on UPSC interviews? Are they an exercise in intimidation, or is it more like they're trying to have an intelligent conversation with you basically? How would you characterize it?
So it's a very cordial environment. All 3 times it was very cordial.
Yes.
First interview was with Vas sir.
Hmm.
Second was with PK Joshi sir,
Hmm.
and this year again it was Vas sir. So and especially
Did they
Vas sir.
remember you?
Sorry, sir.
Did they remember you from your previous encounter? Was there any
No, he did
mention
not
of
mention anything. No,
that?
Vas sir did not mention anything. So and they were very cordial, especially Vyas sir's board. He's very cordial. He's very enthusiastic. He encourages you a lot to talk.
Hmm.
It's very, and I mean, one thing that I feel is very cliched is that personality test is not a test of knowledge. So I believe it's a test of knowledge because they won't speak to you about jokes or partying or whatever. It's a very knowledge-oriented exercise. They ask, especially Vasta's board, both the times I found the questions to be very tough, very factual in nature. In fact, I was asked about how many marginal farmers are there in my state. So I had luckily gone through the economic survey of my state. The summary part, I was able to answer a few questions. So prepare your DAF well. They will ask you a lot of questions. In my case, I was from IPS, so the obvious question was why IAS after IPS. So a few questions around criminal justice. So those kind of questions they ask, but sir, I think it's all manageable. The main thing is you need to be confident and you need to be patient. And I mean, express your views nicely. Don't get impatient. Don't be in a hurry to answer. And all that is only possible if you've done the groundwork correctly.
So true.
First attempt with Vassar, I got 171. I had not prepared my state very well, and I got trapped there because I was asked about a lot of geography questions from my state. Where is this district? Where is this district? In fact, one of the board members had served in Odisha. Luckily,
They
this
have
time
rich experience.
more prepared. So that gave me a slightly more confidence. I was more grounded. So I held my ground. I got 193. So I think good preparation, confident answering. That's all. Nothing else.
Did you try to bluff your way through any question? Like, you won't know, but still.
No, never.
I've lost your video feed, beta. So, where were we? Let's pick up from there.
We were speaking about bluffing in the interview.
Yes.
Should it be done or not?
Did you?
Yeah. So yeah.
Or not even the slightest, or was it like, were you very particular that I'll be very forthright if I don't know the answer to something, or?
Yes, I was very forthright. In fact, sir, this year I took permission from the board. I was not unsure on the answer, so I took permission from the board. Sir, may I try? And sir, in fact, this time around, interestingly, I said no to at least 10 questions.
Did that sap your confidence there?
Can you hear me, sir?
Yeah, I can. Yeah.
I said no to at least 10 questions. So what happened is this time, all the questions that was posed to me by the chairman were very relevant. But the board member, very relevant to my DAF.
Okay.
But 3 out of 4 board members, they asked me questions. I don't know whether they were trying to put me on a spot or was it a stress interview. I'm not really sure. But they asked me a lot of questions which I felt were not very relevant to my DAF. For example, they asked me 2-3 questions from electronics and communications. Or satellite communication, this and that. So I said, sir, I don't know. In fact, one of the members kept asking me questions on communication and electronics. I kept saying no. So at one point, he said, why don't you try? So he himself wanted me to try. So at that case, in that scenario, you can try.
Yes.
But I feel the best way, in fact, sir, when I came out, I felt maybe it didn't go so well. I got 190. So, which is not a bad score at all. So that indicates that no is a perfectly fine answer if you don't know an answer. So, because bluffing can be a little insulting to the intelligence of the questioner. That's a very strong belief I hold. So I never bluff.
But did you feel your confidence sapping when you had to say no for 10 questions, and were you literally counting in your head, oh shit, it's the third no and the fourth and the sixth?
Yes, it happened. I'll be very honest. It happened. In fact, 3-4 on the trot questions I passed.
Yes.
So left questions and it started playing a bit on my mind. But then again, because I had faced 2 interviews, so I kind of knew that it doesn't really amount for much. So I again bounced back. So I didn't let it impact me much. But yes, it does happen. It does happen. It's a very good point because a lot of people, when if some aspirants are listening, it will happen to you if you're saying no repeatedly. It might happen that your confidence sinks, but just try and hang it. There will definitely be a 6th or 7th question that you can answer to.
Right.
And just try to hit it out of the park the best you can.
Jubin, one thing somewhat remarkable about your preparation journey seems to be that you've been almost working throughout, right?
Sure.
When the first time you cracked it, and then of course this time around also you were in probation, right?
Yeah.
In training. So how do you just shed some light on time management, like managing a job or a full-time training along with this thing?
Right. So what I used to do is I used to basically utilize small chunks of breaks and time. So, for example, in IPS training, so the training is very grueling. is in
Yes.
fact the toughest training amongst all the civil services. So we start our day at 5 a.m. in the morning. We finish somewhere around 7:30 in the evening. 8 o'clock we have lunch, dinner, and then we're off to bed. So
Yes.
what I used to do is I used to utilize the small coffee breaks. Sometimes if the faculty is not really looking at me or he's engrossed somewhere else, I used to have my tab. I used to just flip the editorials of the day, or maybe studies related to cybersecurity or my DAF. That's what I used to do. And then every day, once I used to come back to my room, 1 hour studies I used to do for interview. The same thing I used to do for during my 18 attempt. So I used to have very long meetings in the office. So I
Hmm.
used to focus on the meetings, but at the same time I used to log into various sites, solve 5 or 6, 10, daily questions for prelims.
Hmm.
So in my to and fro journey from my house to Bangalore, traffic is very bad. So my to and fro journey used to be around 2.5 hours, both
Right.
sides included. So I used to utilize that. I used to listen to some RSTV program. RSTV is a beautiful source. I benefited a lot for mains, especially my first attempt. Given my less, time constraint, I
Hmm.
could not read the newspapers on a daily basis. So I used to keep tab on RSTV, Big Picture, India's World, all that I used to listen to in my taxi, in my cab. So, so find small chunks of time. Don't wait for those 4 hours slot to sit and do a marathon session. That won't happen. So if you're juggling multiple things together, then find half an hour. So these half an hour, 15 minutes things will add up to, let's say, 5 hours a day.
Right.
Then weekends I used to utilize well. Even in IPS training, Sunday is mostly off,
Hmm.
and in corporate stint we used to have Saturday and Sunday off both days. So I
Right.
used to sit 7, 8 hours easily on the weekends. So that's how I managed it.
So you very, I would say, highly efficient with your, utility of your time.
Yes, and in fact, I used to look at it very positively. Like I said, my attention span is not really great.
Hmm.
So I used to look at my training and my job as something where I can go and do something apart from studying. So it
Right.
was like my so that way I think sir I never burnt out
Hmm.
during preparation phase. I never felt very burdened with preparation because I had multiple things on my plate.
Right.
So
And a
the
lot of
so
lot of working professionals, they're contemplating quitting their jobs in order to, and a lot of them do, to prepare full
yeah.
time for the civil services. Would you say that one should not? I mean,
I mean, sir, to be honest, I am fortunate enough today because I am on the right side.
yes.
So to claim that you should not leave your job, but again, I mean, if I had failed, so I wouldn't have been able to make that statement. But
Hmm.
yes, I'll be very honest in telling that if somebody leaves their job, they
Hmm.
will obviously have more time, more bandwidth to
Yes.
prepare. In
Yes.
fact, my dad today also we were speaking about it, and he said, "Who knows? In the first attempt itself, if you listen to me and you quit a job, you might have, you could have gotten into IS maybe in the first attempt. You never know, or
Right.
maybe I could have sustained 1 year of studies without doing something else, and I
Hmm.
would have dropped out of the list completely." So it's anybody's guess, but sir, I for one believe that one should never put all his eggs in one basket.
True.
So I believe if you have a good job, if you have a job which is paying you well, which is taking care of you well, which is which you find interesting, I
Yes.
mean, you should just skip it
Hmm.
or quit it. So I
Hmm.
think it's manageable. Preparation along with job is manageable. If you have one full year with you to prepare for this exam with a job, it's manageable. My personal belief. So that's what I tell my friends, and there are a lot of people who call me, especially from Bangalore. So I have a small group, and they're preparing. So I tell them don't quit a job, but some of them do. So they feel burnt out and they do.
Hmm.
It's a very gray area. So,
That's true. It also depends on one's socio-economic background, and
absolutely, sir.
a job
Absolutely.
can be a source of great financial security and mental peace.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. For yourself, for your family, for everyone. So I think, sir, it's manageable, and if possible, one should not leave his job. Like I said, sir.
Jubin, also share, like, how do you select limited sources? Today we are inundated with multiple good quality, magazines and books
So,
and websites and everything, right?
so,
So we are like overloaded with information and content. How do
so,
you zero down on select few and stick to them?
so. In fact, this is the problem I face. In fact, everybody faces nowadays in all
Yes.
three attempts. So even in my last attempt, I remember I had for current affairs section of mains, I had noted down I'll do this magazine, I'll do this magazine, I'll do this magazine. I had noted down three magazines that I'll do these many magazines. But what happens is the time is limited. So
Yes.
by the time you finish the first magazine itself, you realize I can't do those two.
So
So
true.
what I do is I used to have one particular magazine, any magazine, pick up any good current affairs magazine of
Yes.
one full violations. All these institutions come up, and most of them are free nowadays. Pick up
Yes.
any good one magazine, okay, and do it nicely, page to page. Most of your especially the current affair based questions
Hmm.
between essays for GS and one good magazine. I think
Hmm.
most of the current affairs of last 2 years will be covered, especially for mains. So what I used to do is the rest of the two magazines, I used to do very selected topics. If I find there is something very new that I can use, which is not there in the previous magazine, only those three, four, five topics I used to do at best. So I mean, it's a very again, I mean, go via this, trial by fire method. Go through the at least the contents of these three magazines or four magazines which are in new, which everybody uses. So and then decide which appeals to you the most, font size, who is
Yes.
using diagram, all those things matter because
Yes.
you got to hold your span of attention for those many hours to study that. So it's
So
a very subjective call. But yes, like you said, it's very important to do one magazine thoroughly.
yes. And did you deal with that fear of missing out? यार उसमें कुछ छूट जाएगा, अच्छा होगा, important होगा.
Absolutely, वो होता है, बिल्कुल होता है, वो तो लास्ट मोमेंट तक भी होता है. So
Yes.
उसके लिए कुछ कर नहीं सकते, firstly, and because the stakes are so high,
Hmm.
naturally everybody will feel the same. But
Yes.
try and stop that instinct, क्योंकि जो मैंने सब mostly देखा है, that if your static is very sound, may
Hmm.
it be in prelims or mains, static deals with around 60%, 70% of the questions in mains as well as prelims. Current affairs is more like the cherry on the top, जिसमें हम एग्जाम्पल उठाए कोट करते हैं, फैक्ट्स कोट करते हैं. वेरी फ्यू क्वेश्चन आर डायरेक्टली करंट अफेयर्स. सो स्टैटिक शुड बी गुड, वो थरो रहना चाहिए. एंड फॉर करंट अफेयर्स ट्राई एंड डू दीज एनी वन मैगजीन. पेपर आपने रेगुलरली पढ़ा होगा तब भी हो जाएगा. इफ यू आर ओनली लिसनिंग टू आरएससीबी आल्सो फ्रॉम मेंस पर्सपेक्टिव तब भी हो जाएगा. So I think that's what one should do.
Say that is
Again,
very well advised.
strategies are always very different for very different people. Clear. So
Jubin, tell us about making notes. Yeah, like did you make notes for all portions of the syllabus, or did you not? And what kind of notes you made? Did you underline in the books? Did you make like handwritten notes for each and every portion? How was it?
so
Were there digital notes? Like how was it?
the notes making is another area where I did not fare well
Achha.
because I had limited time. First of all, secondly, it's a very tiresome job, is what I felt.
Yes.
So what I used to do is I made notes only for sociology.
Yes.
For GS paper, I did not have significant notes. Yeah, for GS paper, for mains, what I observed is there are many fringe areas that people miss out on. But in
Okay.
the actual exam, you get a lot of questions from there. For example, disaster management, internal security, these areas will give you 50, 60 marks each.
Mm-hmm.
Even last year, there were 40 marks from internal security. A lot of people don't really realize. We spend a lot of time in economics for GS3.
Absolutely.
So, so I was trying to make a point about the fringe areas. So, like I said, internal security, disaster management, governance in GS2, even in ethics, GS4, governance is a part of it, part of both. So these
Yes.
areas, these are low-hanging fruits. They ask you direct questions, and you get a lot of questions from these areas. So I used to make notes for these smaller areas. So I had some, notes prepared for disaster management. It's a 5-pager note, 5 or 6 pages I wrote for disaster management, more than sufficient. So I collated all types of protocols, Yoga protocol, Sendai protocol, and a few points from NDMP. So
Right.
that was my disaster management. I had notes for governance. I had notes for social justice.
Right.
So these smaller areas to make notes. Ethics again, not only for ethics, for Indian I felt examples were needed. I used to keep a bank of examples in terms of notes. So, for example, for instance, for ethics, for every value that I could think of, I used to have two, three examples.
Jubin, I'm afraid the your net is again acting slightly funny.
So like I was saying, for instance, in ethics, we need a lot of examples. So for each kind of value that I could think of, probity, integrity, honesty, compassion, I used to create a bank of some examples, two, three
Achha.
examples of some bureaucrat who is doing well, some IPS, IAS officer, or maybe some Padma Shri awardee, maybe somebody who is a global personality.
Yes.
So various kinds of examples I used to make notes of, because I feel examples you can only reproduce if you have made notes of in a very thematic fashion. So that's something I used to do. But beyond that, I did not write much in terms of notes.
How about the the big portions, polity, history, geography, right? These are very big areas of
Yeah,
your
yeah.
UPSC syllabus. So, did you make
So
notes for them, or was it underlining in books? How was it?
yes, yes. So I used to highlight. In fact, my all my books have turned yellow, blue, and green. So I
Yes.
used to highlight multiple times. First time I used to highlight it. It's a green highlighter, then probably a pink one.
Yes.
Colorful books now. So I never made notes for the big portions. So polity,
Right.
history, I used to do from the standard books, Lakshmikant, Rajiv Sir's book,
Yes.
but under, so that that familiarity is there. That yes, I have done it twice or thrice.
Yes. Jubin, if you could bust some common myths about the this exam. Hmm?
So,
It's a beast for most. Huh? So,
so, so common myths. Firstly, I think there's a lot of myths around marathon study hours, like 12 hour plus 16 hours, 18 hours. People,
yes.
there are people who come and ask me, sir, do I have to really sacrifice my sleep and prepare for it? I
Yes.
really don't think so. Yeah, because firstly, sir, if somebody is sacrificing his sleep, he's not preparing for the exam well. Because if you're not well rested, you cannot sustain. Your
So true.
memory, your body will get tired out. You cannot practice writing and all that. So sleep
Yes.
is a very important aspect of it. So that's the first myth. Don't do 16-hour studies at the cost of sleep. Sleep nicely for 7, 8 hours, 10 hours if needed. Be well rested and
Yes.
study for at least let's say 5 to 6 hours a day. It can go up to 10, 11, 12 as the exam comes nearby.
Yes.
Uh, Let it be consistent. So if I study one day for 12 hours, next 2 days I don't, then I'm missing out on a lot of things
True.
because that momentum will not be able to be built up. So
Yes.
that is something very important. But again, marathon hours not again needed, I feel. Second, I think we have already addressed that aspect that you have to read a lot of books. That again is not right.
Hmm.
Rather, you select one book. For example, history, I used to only study Rajiv Sir's book and
Yes.
some aspects of NCRT. So stick to that.
Yes.
What else? What else? What else? So I think these are the two myths which come to my mind. I mean, for any serious candidate, sir, I believe these myths do not apply because somebody who is really aspiring for this exam, they will do enough groundwork even before getting into it to know that these myths are not valid at all. So
ठीक है. Also, if you could, how do you remember so much information, right? Because you read
sure,
across subjects and so many
sure,
topics, and then of course you have this never-ending supply of current affairs events and happenings.
sure.
You know? So, how do you address that challenge?
Yeah. Sir, I think most important aspect of it is at least taking one look at the important current affairs
Hmm.
and the static part. Static part is anyways it is indispensable. So everybody knows, for example, these 20 or 22 chapters of Lakshmikant is very important. So
Yes.
that needs to mug up. So
Hmm.
people hate using the word mugging up. People hate using the word learning. We talk a lot about the exam being very, very analytical in nature. But no matter how analytical the exam is, the question is, if you do not back your answers with facts, you're going nowhere. For
Yes.
example, if there is a question on poverty, and I'm not quoting Rangarajan Committee Sir's report of
Yes.
29% poverty or Tendulkar Committee report of 22% poverty, I
Yes.
am not making a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So facts and the static aspect of it, the polity aspect, the history aspect, these have to be rote learned. There is no way around it. Some might be able to do it in three revisions. Some people may need six. So whatever you need, you decide for yourself and you do it. Some people, I used to have a habit of having a rough copy with me and just scribble randomly, not make notes, just
Hmm.
write. Remember. My mom used to tell me that writing once is equivalent of reading something 5 times. So I used to write a few things.
Yes.
So that way I used to remember. So rote learn, develop that habit because the greatest of minds, they need to have something up there to process the information. It's like a
Absolutely.
highway. you don't put information, what will be processed? So be very open to rote learning. It's not a bad thing at all.
Yes.
When
When
it
it
is
comes
done
to
in
this exam.
yes, when this exam, even sir, the biggest of scientists, I mean, at the end of the day, they have rote learned the basic concepts of physics, the formulas of physics, or chemistry for that matter. So it's not a bad thing. It should not be overdone, but it should be done adequately first. And secondly, when it comes to remembering a lot of current affairs and information, at least always have the good habit of if you're not able to read newspaper daily, at least in that given week, whatever has been in news, just try and get a hang of it. For example, farmers, the farm bills have been scrapped recently. At least go through one article to get a sense of what is the government's argument as to why it is being scrapped. Is it being delayed or completely scrapped? What was the reason behind it? What kind of a role Supreme Court played behind it, or the farmers movement played behind it? These will really help you enrich your answers. So go through these things once, and then when the exam comes, all these issues will be repeated in your magazines.
Yes.
So there only you can do it twice or thrice. So that way I also remember. And sir, I used to use a lot of facts and examples, like I said. So for those, there is no other way but to read. Now, if I have to remember at least 5, 6 reports of what is India's rank in SDR, what is India's rank in gender parity report, I mean, there is no other way. I just have to mug it up. So that is something everybody needs to do. So 2 to 3, maybe 5 times revision, and try and use it actively in the mock answers, because the recalling is a very different game altogether. Remembering, recalling are two different things. So that needs to be practiced during a mock answers itself.
You deserve an award for honesty, right? And the award of the decade for that, really, because that so needed to be said that this exam requires a fair amount of mugging up and.
Yes, sir, absolutely, absolutely.
So it's a badnaam word, but rote learning.
Yeah. Yes, sir. It's a badnaam ho gaya word, but it's not a bad thing. Basically, rote learning is for memorizing.
Yes.
So if you can memorize a lot of things, you will always be at an advantage. So I think the training में भी बोलते थे जो investigating officers होते हैं, those investigating officers who remember a lot of IPC and CRPC provisions.
Oh yes.
Really be very good at investigating. They won't have loopholes to be questioned by the defense. So memorizing is something that we need to do and learn, because as bureaucrats, that's going to be a bread and butter for a long time.
Yes. Jubin, also, what 3 key tips for success in this exam could you share?
So, sir, rather than be very specific, I'll try and talk at a high level. Firstly, I think one should be very open to sacrifice. And like I said, I'll try to be very honest, brutally honest. One needs to sacrifice. One needs to, have some amount of endurance of, physical pain, mental pain, financial pain. If somebody has left a very good job, there will be always a thought playing behind his mind. And this is my pretty constant. So one has to sacrifice. One has to be very open to, go through all these, traumatic experiences. Yes. And sometimes this exam really tests you. At the same time, life is also not stopping for you. For example, 1 month before my interview, like you said, I lost my mother. So this exam took 3 years for me, but again, life didn't stop. So life is also taking a toll on you. I know a lot of people, who lost so many things. They lost 6 attempts. Things didn't go well. I have spoken to a lot of people without taking names who have, almost on the verge of turning suicidal. So that you should not come to that, right? And the day one, you should be very mentally, in a stable way. You decide that I am willing to make the sacrifices. I'm willing to face the pain. First thing. Second thing, sir, key to success would be there is no substitute for hard work. It's very cliche, but I again reiterate: no substitute for hard work. Because like I said, rote learning is something cannot be avoided, and you need to put hours. There is no other way around it. And so, lastly, a lot of practice, because no matter how good your arsenal is, how good your weapon is, you need to learn how to use it. So that happens only through practice. The prelims exams, my advice and request to the aspirants would be that at least practice 30 tests, at least for prelims, before you write prelims. Even for mains, I think if you can write somewhere between 10 to 15, 20 papers for GS, 20 is a bit too much, because nowadays the number of days between pre and mains has come down to about 70 odd days. So at least 10, 15 papers one should write. So practice. Yes. Practice writing, practice, solving prelims, filling up the bubbles. Everything needs practice. Because many a times I have heard people have misfilled the bubbles. So the answer
Hmm.
they tick B, but they fill C. So
Yes.
unless you do it 10, 15 times at least, you won't be comfortable. In fact, sir, writing three prelims, clearing three prelims, this time I got, I think, 122, uh, which was a bad score. But even this time, the first question that I ticked, and when I was about to fill the bubble, my hand was shaking. It happens to everyone. You're very
Yes.
nervous with the first few questions. So you
Yes.
need to, unless you do, you will make mistakes. These three things are, I believe, are very important. Right mindset, hard work, and practice.
Great. Uh, Jubin, you've improved your rank in the exam from 235 in 2018 civil services exam to rank 46 this year, right? 2020 exam. So, what changes you saw in your own preparation, like that resulted in this vast improvement?
So, in terms of knowledge, to be very honest, the bandwidth more or less remained the same.
Yes.
So, what changed? What the change I made this time is because I had some time before mains this time.
Hmm.
I wrote a lot of papers. Like I said, for GS, I wrote around 18 papers. That improved my completion rate. So earlier, I used to miss out on a few questions where I used to just write drop keywords, flowcharts, and just finish it off. This time I made sure, apart from a few questions in GS4, because the paper was very long,
Yes.
in fact, GS1, GS2, I finished a minute or two before the time. In fact, I was surprised in GS1. I was flipping pages that, let me ensure that I haven't missed out on any question. So
Hmm.
that's what writing will do to you. Because if you have written, let's say, around 300 questions on your own,
Yes.
the thought process you get in the exam will be very quick.
True.
You will, because all your themes are prepared.
Hmm.
For example, so there are very some areas which will be repeated year after year. For example, Buddhist art forms.
Yes.
Every year, in some form or the other. RTI, every year, only the structure of the question changes. The
Hmm.
theme remains the same, the examples you can use remains the same. So if you write it in the mock once or twice, you are already there. 80% of your answer is ready. Just need to, go and mold it. So practice. This time, the main thing that I changed was write papers. That changed a lot for me.
Yeah.
That is the big change.
Jubin, we'll be wrapping up soon. Huh? I won't hold
Sir,
you too long from your dinner.
absolutely.
So,
My pleasure talking to you.
what was I going to ask you about? Just a sec, let me recall. Did you face the kind of insecurities that many of the aspirants do? So, given that you cracked the exam in your first attempt and you also had a job in hand, was it
Sir.
still, were there like those fears and insecurities that are typical to this preparation,
Yes,
period?
sir. It was no doubt about it. Maybe a little less because like you said, I had a job that I loved. And in fact,
Yes.
sir, I had some really good opportunities to move abroad. And
Hmm.
if not for UPSC, I would have taken it and moved on. But again, that being said, when you put your heart, soul, and sweat into something, you
Yes.
naturally become very attached to it.
Yes.
So UPSC that way is one exam where you give so many time hours, so many years to this process. You get
Yes.
attached to it.
True.
And in fact, despite of getting into IPS, I wrote again. I
Yes.
toiled hard again because at the back of your head, you is still playing that I wanted IAS. So there are many people who keep first preference as IPS. So
Yes.
it's a beautiful job. But again, like I said, so the emotional attachment part to the exam, to the service you want to get into, so that kind of makes you a little insecure. What
Yes.
if? And this exam is very tough in a sense that it's decided by margins. A
Yes.
small error here and there, one mark here and there, your service can change. You can be thrown out of the game.
True.
Um, and very few people. In fact, I met a very senior IAS officer, retired officer in Bangalore once when I started preparing. So one thing he said is at the end of the day, at the end of the year, in fact, the academic year of UPSC, hardly 20, 30 people will walk away happy, genuinely happy. Rest
So,
everybody will have some dissatisfaction. Somebody will be crying, I didn't get a service of choice. Somebody will be crying that I didn't get service at all.
yes.
Somebody will be crying that I did not get a cadre of my choice. So that way you have to be that makes you insecure naturally.
And
So
this is for those aspirants who made it to the list. Think of
absolutely,
umpteen
absolutely.
numbers of those who haven't made it.
Yes. I mean, the numbers are really, really brutal. So to speak, 10 lakh odd people and it converts into 700 odd.
Yes.
And, that too, again, choice of service is, very limited, 100, 200 seats. So, it naturally makes you a little insecure. So, truth be told.
Jubin, what has been your motivation throughout these years of preparation? What's kept you going? And you faced some tough moments like losing
Sure.
one's parent, right?
Yeah.
Just before the interview. So, how have you dealt with those, and what has kept
Uh,
you?
so my parents, like I said, most of the parents, they were my pillar of, support. Uh, I'm married. My wife was my pillar of support as well. She motivated me a lot. She, take up the daily chores and a lot of things that she helped me with that saved me time.
Yes.
And in terms of motivation, sir, I'll still get, come back, circle back to the same. My mom was my biggest inspiration. She used to speak to me, and she was a hardcore educationist. So she retired in 2013. So every time I used to call her, she used to discuss history with me. She used to remember all the dates very well.
Yes.
She had a brilliant mind. So she used to discuss sociology with me. She used to discuss a lot of current affairs with me. बेटा आपने ये पढ़ लिया कि नहीं वो पढ़ लिया कि नहीं है आफ्टर मेंस she used to call me 5 बजे एग्जाम खत्म होता था 5 I used to get a call कि वो फिर 20 क्वेश्चन हम डिस्कस करते थे. She was a big pillar of support for me. And when I lost my mother, obviously the situation was very tough because by the time I got back to my academy, I had 20 days to go for my interview. And the
Yes.
academy schedule is very, like I said, forgiving. It doesn't change. Even if you're going for interview, you're given 2 days of leave.
Yes.
One day before the interview and next day for medical. Then you come back.
Yes.
So that was very difficult. So, but again, I mean, I kept telling myself that this was in a way, it was my mom's last dream. So, I kept telling myself that. I had some really good friends in the academy, sir.
Yeah.
And some of them will be joining me in Vipassana as well. So, talking to them, they motivated me. We used to discuss a lot about interviews, current affairs. I had a good ecosystem, sir, I'll say. So,
If you could share, what's the role of your other family members, your
right.
mother, your sister? Have they in
Right.
any way, like, in what ways have they? I'm sure they have. In what ways have they contributed, like, to your preparation?
So in fact, my dad, me turning, getting into IAS is like rather a bittersweet moment for my dad because he's very happy that, my mom really wanted me to get into IAS
Right.
and I wanted to get into IAS. So
Yes.
he was very happy that chalo, jo unka dream tha ho gaya, now he's getting into IAS. But he being a man of uniform, army, so
Yes.
he loved the fact that I was in IPS.
In the IPS.
बोला था कि यार तुम क्यों कर रहे हो? That's when वो central service.
Yes.
So she was very happy when I got into IPS.
Right.
So how he contributed was that has a humorous side to him. He's a light-hearted person. बिल्कुल typical army guy. So वो उनसे बात करके बिल्कुल tension free हो जाता था. So he used to tell me कि ठीक है यार exam नहीं होगा नहीं होगा. आपको क्या कमी है? आप tension मत लो. So he used to, he was my stress buster in a way.
Right.
And he kept me going. But at the same time, whenever the exams were near, he used to keep me going. That ye kar lo, wo kar lo. Naturally, I mean, he was a big support. I mean, I'm speaking a little more about my mom because I was very close to my mom. So,
Yes.
but again, that was a huge support that way. My elder sister, she in fact, she really wanted me to do civil services right from when I got into this thing,
Right.
my private job.
She's
She
in
told
law
me
side.
even.
She's an
Sorry,
advocate.
sir?
Florence is an advocate.
Yes, she did. She really wanted me to go for civil services. Right in 2014-ish, when I started off my job early into my career, she said, "एक बारी लिख के देख लो." So, and she used to talk to me. We used to talk about many things, law, and we used to talk about, and the biggest contribution she made to me was she and my parents both stay in Bhubaneswar. So although she has a different house, different locality, but that gave me a peace of mind that I stay in Bangalore, I can focus on my work, focus on my exam. She used to take care of my parents.
Right.
I mean, she used to do a lot of things. That was again a huge support, mental support. And of course, the more I say about my wife, it still will be less, and I'll still get scolded. You didn't talk about me enough. She was with me throughout. In fact, there were times when time used to be less, she used to make some small notes for me. ये पढ़ लिया क्या, वो पढ़ लिया क्या. She used to make WhatsApp groups, forward me some important articles and all that. She was a big support, of course. So without these people, these great women and men, I would not have been able to do this exam on my own.
So yeah, hats off to your mother particularly. I'm sure she's happy for you, right? And she's watching over you.
So
one could possibly say that your success belongs as much to them as it does to you, right?
yes, sir, absolutely.
Possibly more to them than to you.
I would really, with your permission, like to make a small quote that my mom used to tell me every single day, almost. Ever since I started preparation, she used to tell me that, beta, paise har koi kama sakta hai. It's not that you are earning money. You come back here, you do a business, you get money. Whatever you do, you get money. There are illegal ways of getting money. But one thing that very rare people get in life is the opportunity to help people and make absolutely meaningful contributions. And so the day I came back, recently I took a leave from IPS. I'm here and I'll be joining Labasna soon.
Yes.
So I realized that because, in fact, the domestic help at my sister's place, she's a very old lady. She has been applying for Indira Awas for a long time. For some reason or the other, she was not able to reach the sub-collector level, or I don't know what exactly was the problem.
Right.
I just made a small call and I said, sir, I'm a new, IS entrant, and this is what he knew. He had, heard my name in the news and all that. So I just requested him, and sir, believe me, in 7 days she has got her this thing due paid to her.
Yes.
So that's a very small thing, but 1 lakh may not be a huge amount for many of us, but for her, it's the matter of life and death. She can build a house for herself. So that is the kind of thing my mom used to talk about, and I realized it firsthand recently.
And so this job affords you that opportunity.
Absolutely, sir. To put a smile on many faces, and probably to, like Gandhiji said, wipe tears from eyes that deserve to be wiped of tears, and they smiling eyes and dreamy eyes with a lot of dreams in them rather than tears.
And along with a very, should I say, a very comfortable life for oneself as well. It's not that one is in the pits.
Yes, absolutely. This job
very well taken care of by the government.
Yes, absolutely, sir. That goes without saying. In fact, this year interview, they asked me this question. They said that you used to get a lot of salary. You were walking away from a huge amount of
private sector.
Yeah. So they said that you won't be getting as much here, and this is almost nothing, next to nothing. So, so money not matter to you at all. So I was very frank. Like I said, I used to be very frank and honest. So I said, sir, money matters to me. I'll be very honest. It matters to everyone. Because at the end of the day, everybody likes to have at least certain basic level of standard of life and afford that for his own family. So that will be important. But again, I have weighed the pros and cons. Like you said, the government takes care of you. The government gives you enough salary for you to be able to address all your needs.
Yes.
Well enough. So I think it's a very good service, sir. That way, very good job opportunity in a sense. It's a service, but those added benefits.
Also decent, very decent.
Absolutely.
Career, right, for oneself.
And people put a lot of faith in you. So the moment somebody learns that you're an IPS or maybe an IAS or IRS, whatever it is, so they just have that comfort level that this is the person who can help me. That matters a lot. At least at a personal level, it matters a lot.
The kind of satisfaction that can afford you, nothing, no amount of money can, in a way.
Absolutely.
You haven't still got the schedule from Labasna, have you? Like till yesterday, you had not.
December 5th is the starting date of foundation course. But how it happens since last year is they call in batches.
Yes.
So 100 people on 30th, then first, second, third.
Yes.
So so far I'm not, none of us know that which slot we will be called on.
Correct.
So maybe I'll be going there on 30th, maybe first, maybe second, maybe third. Third being the latest. So if it is third, assuming it is third, I'll probably be in Delhi, sir, on first. Second, we are planning, a couple of us, 2-3 of our friends, we're planning to go via road from Delhi. So thank you so much, sir. It was a very lively discussion. Always pleasure talking to knowledgeable people like yours.